Hello everyone. Today I want to talk a little bit about what has been going on since the last time I did ayahuasca. It's been exactly a year. So I stopped doing my last ceremony last November. And I made a video of my first ceremony, I believe, and then after that I stopped. And after doing 9 ceremonies, I decided to not do anymore just because I wanted to integrate and understand a lot of the things that were being taught to me. Of course, this time, a year, I just felt like it was time for me to, make this video and hopefully share with you, especially to those people that are ready to do medicine, what are some of the things you need to know before you do this. Okay, what are some of the things that a lot of people are not saying that will help you understand a little bit better of what you need to do as you're preparing yourself to do this? There are many things that personally I experienced with ayahuasca that I was asked to do. And this is the reason why I'm here. This is the reason why I finally decided, okay, it's time for me to fulfill my agreement. So prior to getting to a description of, more of the things that you need to know before you start, I am going to share with you why I decided to do this. So, I was going through a breakup and it was really tough. I had met somebody a few years before, and I really thought that this was going to be the person for the rest of my life. I ended up marrying this person, and before a year of before our anniversary, everything fell apart. And I will tell you that no matter what I tried, things just would not work out. So you can imagine, here I am, I'm not a spring chicken. And I thought, I had done plenty to understand myself. I thought that I had the ability to know with the type of person that I was getting myself into. And here now, suddenly, this person that I thought had all that it took and was there walking side by side is changed his mind. And it's not necessarily that this person didn't love me. There was just other stuff going on. This person had a lot of trauma, and it's not something that was new to me. I accepted this person in the way they were, but I just was just like really torn and hurt. So one of the things that I decided to do was, well, I am not going to go into a depression. I am really stubborn. And I'm the kind of person that I'm always very determined to know and go deeper. So I thought, well, I am going to, instead of, being all, feeling sorry for myself, I'm going to go and search and see what I should be doing next. In 2009, I had a Kundalini awakening, so that sort of put me in this path of self-discovery. And, I have come to that point where I thought, it's too late for me to stop. And although things are sort of falling apart, I know too much, and especially, about the law of attraction. So maybe, it is time for me to move into a direction where I need to attract other things. So one of the things that I decided to do was to go to Peru. So I started to research, and one of the things that I started finding was videos about ayahuasca. Of course, one thing led to the other, and before I knew it was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. This is perfect. This is actually going to be the most direct way for me to tap within myself and find, those emotions that are causing me to create a lot of these experiences. So, I just felt like that was the outlet, the doorway that was going to bring me the clarity of what I needed to know with this relationship. It's funny that as soon as I made that decision, I started to have visions. I was having dreams where I was definitely being supported by this decision. And then it was just a matter of, okay, where am I going to go? Who am I going to do it with? So it's just figuring that out. And as you know, there is so much information out there. And it's very overwhelming because you have all these different places in Peru that are offering medicine, also in the United States, and it's kind of like sometimes a little bit overwhelming, but at the same time I feel like we're always being guided to find the right people, right, who to do it with. In my case, I had to, change plans. So instead of going to Peru, I decided to make it locally. And as soon as I did that, I was able to reconnect with somebody who I had met 5 months before at work that was facilitating medicine. So as you could see, it's funny how sometimes we connect to people in a particular way, and it's all kind of part of our evolution and development. So, this woman had invited me to one of her ceremonies, and I was just not interested. So here, 5 months later, I'm like, you know what? She's the right person. And, one thing led to the other, where I was able to know when I could do this ceremony. And in the meantime, I just got ready. So, there are a diet that we have to do. And one of the important things about doing that diet is that it really helps to minimize a lot of the side effects that you can have with the medicine. You know that there's a lot of purging, and that could happen by, mouth or your rear end. And it all depends. Everybody's different. But the one thing that really helps to minimize some of those symptoms is dieting, removing sugar, coffee. You can always go online, and there are many places where they have, a specific diet. So I prepared for a month. I took 1 month where I just, was preparing myself mentally, emotionally. I'm not the kind of person that I like to purge. But I figured, you know what? I was just so committed to do this. I really wanted to find answers. And by the way, they always talk about the intention. You have to set an intention. My intention was to work with my shadow side. I know, it's crazy. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I figured, why not? I just I felt very compelled to do that work. And sure enough, I had this dream where I was integrating my shadow side. Now, the irony with all of that was that in my first ceremony, I received one of the best teachings that I could ever have about unconditional love. I was, Ayahuasca put me in an altered state of awareness where it was all about understanding what this energy was about. And I did make a video about that. So I would encourage you that if you want to know more about it, you can go to that video. But, it was just ironic. Like, here I work with my shadow side, but instead you're giving me love. What is this all about? Of course, much later I understood why. Because really, in order for you to go to that part of you, right, that part of your consciousness that it's, all about emotional darkness, man, you got to know what love is. I mean, it's just hellish. A lot of times people talk about a hell that is out there somewhere, away from our reality, when in reality, hell is just that emotional space where all of our dense emotions go to. And it's not only the ones in this incarnation, but it's also in other incarnations. It also ties you to your ancestors, to the energy of Mother Earth and all of the suffering. I mean, it's just crazy. And it is like a hell, but it's all connected to our feelings, our emotions. Not the good ones, of course, but the bad ones. And I'm not trying to judge here, but it's true. It's all of those emotions that have absence of love. It wasn't until my third ceremony that that the plant took me there. Of course, I had my first ceremony, and for 2 days I was high. In that particular ceremony, there were 10 people, including the facilitator. And I'll tell you, I was the only one that was in that emotional space. Everybody else, after I talked to them, they had a very difficult time. So I understood that somehow in that particular ceremony, I was basically, vibrating, right? Grounding that unconditional loving energy and making sure that I was supporting everybody else. Now, during that ceremony, the whole entire time, I remember feeling a sense of compassion towards other people. But ayahuasca kept saying, this is all about you, Sandra. Just observe and just look what we do when we are twisting our emotions. Look at it, the pain that we cause ourselves. It was just incredible. Of course, this is where I began to understand something, and that is that the power of intention that we set before we do these ceremonies is what tells the plant how far to take you. Okay, so you got to remember that ayahuasca in a way is kind of like an intruder in our consciousness, but it is through that intention that you have that it allows your consciousness, let the consciousness of the plant know of how far to take you. Okay, if that doesn't happen, what happens is that the consciousness just comes in and it behaves in the same way that people would behave if you were to open all the doors of your house, right? All of the windows and all of the doors. You just let anybody in and take over. So that is not a good thing for you, because in a way it's like an intruder taking over, and this can definitely take you into a place of shock. It can compromise the safety of your personality. A lot of times it can actually kill you. I know that when I went to that place of darkness, I thought I was going to die. It was that scary. So knowing that power of intention, having that clarity is definitely the boundaries that your consciousness is setting, is the agreement that your consciousness makes with the consciousness of the plant to help you, right? To take you to that next level so that you can find the clarity in the experience. For 5 hours, your consciousness is wide open. Your vibrational energy is wide open. And you're taking in a lot. And a lot of those, a lot of that information, a lot of that communication sometimes can take you a long time to get. And all this is dependent on your level of evolution, right? And the level of understanding that you have as far as your spiritual nature. So all of those things, you have to take them into account. But just know that the intention is what, guides the plant. Why? Because there's no difference between the consciousness of this plant and yours. They become one once you take in that medicine. So in my second ceremony, this is where I was able to have a lot of visions. I was able to, and I did in the first time, but there was a lot of removing of programming, mental programming. And, I was being shown the difference between intuition versus mind. In the second ceremony, I was able to see a lot of the fractals and sacred geometry. I was very, very high. In that one, I purged a lot of negativity. And for some reason, at some point, something shifted and it became dark. And I believe that in that ceremony, I picked up some negative vibration during that ceremony. And I believe that it could have been part of the house. And this is where you really have to understand the importance of doing a ceremony where the shaman know what is doing. Okay, a lot of times you have people that are facilitating ceremonies or shamans that are very new and very inexperienced in these types of ceremonies or practices, and they don't really know how to create a safety space, right? In the ceremony, they also cannot see when you're purging a lot of that emotional energy, right? Because there is a physical one where you purge a lot of those emotions, but there's also a vibrational one. And this is when, it gets hellish, because you can actually purge vibrational before you actually do the physical. And then after you're done with the physical, you can also purge more vibration. And all of that gets expelled into the circle, right? And if the shaman doesn't have the vision or the ability to see that energy has to go somewhere. And a lot of times it goes back into somebody else. And this is where you hear a lot of those videos where people are saying, I went to a ceremony and by the time I was done, I picked up some negative entity. And it's kind of shitty that here you are paying a lot of money to help heal yourself and you end up taking somebody else's garbage. That is not fair. But that is because a lot of these facilitators or so-called shaman do not have the level of experience to handle that type of energy. So imagine when you're going to a ceremony of 40, 50 people. It's insane. It's insane. And these people are just basically, advertising that, yeah, things are going to be fine. And, and they put these types of sounds that have nothing to do with the vibration of the plant. So one, how do we know when a shaman is experienced and is capable to sustain and do the work that is needed in order to help you achieve what you need? Well, normally the shamans, right? Because there's a lot of ayahuasqueros in Peru, right, that are saying they're shamans and they're not. There's a difference between ayahuasqueros and a shaman. A shaman is somebody who's chosen by their tribe from a very early age to work with plant teachers. And these people, they have to go through very rigorous diets. They have to go through a very extreme level of purification to match the vibration of that plant teacher. Okay, a lot of times, they cannot have, most of the time, they cannot have sexual intercourse during that time. They have to isolate themselves. They have to go through a very rigorous process of learning and cleansing and taking this plant medicines, and not just ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is not the only one. There's over 100 different ones. Now, as they connect to these plants, the plants are able to teach them. And the Icaros, which is the musical sounds, are being taught directly by the plant to the person as this person continues to reconnect with some of these plants. Over time, these plant medicines or these plant teachers become the person's allied. So when you have a true shaman in a ceremony, who do you think is doing most of the transformation as you are purging all those negative emotions? The plants are. So the shaman is sitting there and it can see how, these negative emotions that you're expelling. And then it calls, all of these spirits, right, of these different trees and asks for help. This is why it's so powerful to do ceremonies in the jungle. I'm not saying that the city is not good, but remember the vibration of the city is very different. There's not enough trees to help, change and shift the vibration of, the people that are in the ceremony, unless it's a very good shaman. Okay, because if this shaman has that level of experience, doesn't matter where he is or she is, that is going to get the needed help. And this is one of the things that I saw when I was in Peru. So on my third ceremony, I went to Peru and I did 4 ceremonies. And this is when things really got ugly. That first ceremony in the jungle, it was like the darkest night of the soul. It was the most difficult thing I ever done in my life. Because this is when ayahuasca said, "Are you ready? Are you ready, Sandra? We're going." And she took me to that vibrational place where I had, all of my negativity has accumulated, not just from this incarnation, but from others and from my ancestral bloodline. It was fucking insane, okay? And this is why a lot of times, people that don't understand how to work with the plant, right? And they have a facilitator who doesn't know what to do or explain, they go have these horrible experiences. Because I'll tell you, when I was in that ceremony, I could see how there were moments where the plant would bring me back into the maloka. Maloka is the space where the ceremonies are held, and I usually built in the middle of the jungle, surrounded by trees. And in this maloka, this is where the shaman, right, is working with the people. And I remember that there were moments where, I was being brought back into the maloka so that I would get a little break, right? So that I would not lose my marbles. And I could feel like how my mind wanted to just freak out. But because I have taken all of this time to really work with myself, I just would say, no, don't go there. Because once you do, okay, this is when you start really experiencing darkness. And it's not that the plant is dark, is that you're projecting, your consciousness is projecting to the consciousness of the plant all of your fears, and the plant is reflecting it back to you. So this is when people have this horrific experience during ayahuasca ceremonies, and they think that it's because they're demons, right? Demons are being brought to you, and you hear all kinds of stories that are horrific, but it's nothing but a projection of your own fears. And this is where, you can have a heart attack, or you can have all kinds of things. I mean, there are many things that are happening out there that people are not really sharing, or, sometimes we're not listening because, we are so caught up in the moment and the desire of have this experience that we don't want to hear any type of negativity. Of course, I'm not here to make you afraid. I'm just here to make you aware so that you just don't go, blinded into an experience that may end up a really, challenging one. What we want to do is heal. So, yes, here I am in the first ceremony, and it was crazy, okay? Crazy, because here I am dry heaving. I'm trying to vomit and purge emotions that were super hard around my stomach area. So this is when I had 4 people start working around me. And this is where I feel a sense of blessing and gratitude for these people that were just offering their unconditional love. And the funny thing is that when I would look at them, I wouldn't see them as who they were. They were actually channeling different trees. That's right. I would see them in different ways. So this is when I understood, especially after that ceremony, that yes, the shaman uses, his or her allies to help them work with whatever experience a person is having. Of course, my 3 next experience, well, there were 2 others that were quite hard, but not as bad as the first one. And one of the things that ayahuasca was doing was recalibrating my energy, removing a lot of programming, a lot of the twisting that we do when we are, twisting our emotions. A lot of times, we do that. We make decisions that go against ourselves, and, we tend to twist the flow of energy. You got to remember that we are 80% water, so we're fluid. We're electric, electricity, currents of electricity. So when we start sort of masquerading our emotions, we start twisting our emotions. And then that starts, doing weird stuff to our vibration, to the flow of energy around our body. So she was doing a lot of that. And there were moments where she was working around my heart center that I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I thought, oh God, I didn't come here to die. But ultimately, I knew that she was just trying to help me to release a lot of that negative vibration and shift. On my first ceremony, finally I felt that release, and at some point I saw all of my ancestors that have passed. Some of them I knew, some I didn't. But they just came in a vision and they were thanking me for liberating them. It was just amazing. I cried a lot and I just feel that connection. And yeah, they were thanking me for doing the work, for liberating them. And then I was being asked to and now what? So basically my consciousness and ayahuasca were saying, now what? What do you want to do is totally up to you. And somehow I felt like at that moment I became the protector of my kind. That's about the best that I can explain it, but that I could actually have, I could take that level of authority where I could help any of my family members and overcome any particular challenges, emotional challenges that they might have. I don't know that that's what I was looking for, but I basically became the hot seat. And that was, a very nice, feeling to be able to help, a lot of my family members, my ancestral background. We inherit a lot of those negative emotional negativities or, fears from our ancestors. And, it was a very powerful experience. I came back to Chicago and I'll tell you, the contrast of cleansing my body and going through all of these different diets and then coming back into the real world was really hard on me. And it took me about a good month to, feel, good again, to feel strong again. After that, I had another 4 ceremonies locally. I hope that sort of is the right math. But I think it was another 4 ceremonies that, completed the 9th ceremony. And I did it with the same person who took me to Peru. This is a young guy who is a shaman who was initiated by the Shipibo people. And he had only been doing ayahuasca for about 2 years. So as you could see, he was not very experienced. But he did know how to sing a couple of Icaros. And this is where I want to talk a little bit about Icaros. This is a vibrational sound that is the shaman starts learning and starts connecting with the trees. The trees teach the shaman the different sounds that the shaman can use as, the person is working with the plant. And this is why the Icaros are so important. Okay, a lot of times facilitators are using a different type of music, and I am sorry, I personally don't think that's okay. Why? Because the plants are teaching the person what you need to sing to me, being the plant, when you are working with me. And you got to remember that those are the sounds that is going to help the consciousness of the plant move through different vibrational stages to help you expel, right, a lot of your negativity, but rise above whatever limitations you're dealing with. So in this case with ayahuasca teaches a particular vibrational sound or that has a particular frequency that when she's inside a person, as the shaman starts singing, it's helping the plant move through a lot of your blockages and release them. So it's in the way that the plant can be helped to move beyond those blockages. So imagine when you are using a different type of sound that does not really relate to the vibration of that plant. This is why to me it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense to a lot of the shamans that are in Peru, or some of them, because I didn't meet a lot, but I just met some people that they were saying it just doesn't make sense for a person to sing Icaros without doing ayahuasca, or to doing ayahuasca without the Icaros. But this is one of the things that we do in the Western world, right? We tend to commercialize things and make it okay. And I'm saying, look, traditions are meant to be respected, and there are things that, yes, that we can change, but as long as we remain within the tradition, there are reasons why things are done in a particular way. And it requires us to have a certain level of compassion and understanding and respect for those traditions so that we can then really receive, the right knowledge. Otherwise, we are just sharing common sense. And this is with all due respect. I'm doing this because I was asked to do it by ayahuasca, and this is why I'm here. So I am not a shaman. I am not an expert. But I do have come a long way in my own evolution that allows me to understand things at a deeper level. I'm very clairvoyant and psychic, and working with ayahuasca in my last 4 ceremonies, I was able to see how some of these people are not really knowing what to do. They're not really understanding. They're not getting it. So one of the things that I saw in my last 3 ceremonies, and one of some of the things that I experienced was that as the shaman was closing the ceremony, I was actually the person who was transforming, right, a lot of that negative energy that people were expelling. Of course, I learned a lot, but you got to remember, I haven't done all of those years of dieting, nor I have that many allies. So the only way that I could help a lot of those emotional energies that were being expelled into the circle was by moving them through me, by grounding that love within myself, and hopefully, slowly transforming a lot of these energies. Some of the things that I could see, because I do have the eyesight, that a lot of these emotions were quite grotesque. So anytime we take the unconditional love out of any type of vibration or emotion, it becomes grotesque. And the more we feed it, right, the more it becomes an entity, right, a source of its own. And this is where we call demons and all of this stuff. So there are different, vibrational aspects to this that becomes, that type of energy. But my God, the emotion of fear has a different face than the emotion of hate. And this is what they were coming to me. But the interesting thing was that these energies were communicating to me. And they were telling me that, we can actually, when we acknowledge them, the one way that we can help them change is by accepting that without them, we could not learn the things that we know today. In other words, thanks to those energies is that we are learning about the things we prefer. That it is us that we have taken the love out of them. So our inability to understand certain things about who we are has taken the love out of them. So we have taken them out of their natural state and transformed them into this grotesque energy. And it is through the unconditional love that we can feel that we can actually help them come back once again to their natural state. They also want to go home just like we do. And that was heartbreaking. To see that ugliness expressing itself in that way. So just know that, when you're getting ready to those ceremonies, I know you're going in search for answers, but, practicing love for the self before you do the ceremony is going to be really helpful. Of course, as long as, if you're doing it with somebody who is experienced, well, that's a whole different story, because now this person can really help you, release and also expand and get the type of answers that you are looking for. A lot of times I see videos that people are talking like, I went and didn't have any experience. I didn't have any visions. I didn't have this and I didn't have that. Well, a lot of times that happens because you are dealing with somebody who doesn't have the knowledge, doesn't have the experience. And I'm sorry, but it's the truth. One of the things that ayahuasca said is that she's being misrepresented. And, they are willing to help us, okay? We are going through a transformation where we have been very contaminated, right? So now we have here the veins of Mother Nature helping us, the children of Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it. And we are using now, and we are misrepresenting her, because our concepts of, of success is very different than the consciousness of the plant. So one of the things that these plants are asking is for cooperation. Cooperation from who we are, that we need to learn to cooperate and to understand that not everything is filtered in the same way that we understand life to be. So let's use a little bit of compassion, right? The understanding the nature of compassion. And let's face it, if you are being drawn to do medicine with somebody who is hosting 40, 50, 100 people, that's not somebody who has compassion, especially if they don't have the credentials. I mean, a shaman who is a true shaman will not do that. I can assure you, my friends, somebody who has a lot of understanding of plant medicine is not going to hold a ceremony that big unless they have plenty of help. So you have to decide. You are paying money for this. This is not cheap. We know that. And, it's true, these people work very hard. But I am the kind of person that, if you're going to charge me, I am okay with that. But I want to make sure that I am paying to someone who is really responsible and compassionate about the work they're doing. They're not just doing it for money, to make money. So there is a lot of that today. This has been an explosion of ayahuasca, where now everywhere you go, everybody's facilitating ceremonies. But not everybody is doing the right work. And it sucks that you have to go to a place like this and end up feeling worse than how you went there in the first place. It happened to me. And we're here just to do the work. We're working, and this is where I came to realize, look, if I'm going to these ceremonies, I want to be helped. I'm not in a position yet to, help other people in a ceremony. Outside the ceremony, that's a whole different story. Of course, apparently, according to ayahuasca, I had what it took. Otherwise, those energies wouldn't have come through me. But you know what? They needed to transform themselves. And it was either me or going back to those people that had just purged them out. So, I was able to do that. But I'll tell you, by the fourth ceremony, I was exhausted. Of course, when I explained this to the shaman, he had his own understanding of seeing things, and that was okay. But that was enough to have me to say, I'm not doing this anymore. Okay, so what are the things that I've learned after I stopped? And this is when it gets really fun and incredible. One of the things that I was able to know is that I could duplicate the experience, that I can recreate the experience of ayahuasca without having it. It was very interesting because one of the things that when I was doing ayahuasca that she taught me was that I didn't have to take a lot of medicine in order to have a good experience. You're going to hear that a lot. Oh, you got to take 2 cups, and the more cups you take, the better it is because the deeper the work that you do. Bullshit. Okay? One of the things, the first ceremony that I learned was to respect and honor the plant. And this is not about how much you do. That's coming from a very mental place. This is about what you're capable of allowing, in that moment as the plant is working with you. And let's face it, you can have 30 and 50 ceremonies, but ultimately you have to help your mind catch up with that understanding. And you know what? Sometimes it can take you a lifetime to translate and understand what you're being taught. So what is the rush? I mean, sometimes we can barely make it with one ceremony. Imagine 10 and 50. So, here you're being advertised, right? Oh, the more you do, the better it is. Come on, keep on going, keep on going. When in reality, you can only remember and access so much. So one of the things that I saw was that as I stopped doing ceremonies, that once we open that door of the subconscious mind and we can, bring in and attract, right, or have the communication with that part of us, that we always can, access it. So there were moments where I would be, doing stuff in my house, and all of a sudden I would have this sudden awareness where an emotion was coming out, right, a memory. And in that moment, I was being shown, right, my subconscious mind or my, consciousness were showing me how I had picked up a belief from a particular experience that was traumatizing. There were times when I would start playing the Icarus at night, and all of a sudden I would go into this alter state in the same way as I was doing plant ceremony, in the same way that I was doing ayahuasca. Now, recently I had heard Dr. Joe Dispenza, look him up, he's awesome. But he was talking about research done where our mind doesn't know the difference between the actual experience to observation, meaning that you can be sitting down watching a movie, and if it's let's say, a gory movie and you feel afraid, your mind cannot tell the difference between just watching the movie or experiencing it. So in that moment, in that movie, as you're watching the movie, you're having the actual experience. So that being said, then that means that we can actually, by just memorizing something, recreate the experience, and your mind doesn't know the difference. So it makes you believe that you're actually doing it. And I can vouch for that, because listening to ayahuasca, I would have these moments, right, where I could feel like in the same way I was feeling under ayahuasca. Of course, it didn't take me as long. I was not in an outer state of awareness for 5 hours, but it was long enough to access certain information according to my needs. Just because you have all of that wisdom, right, doesn't mean that you're going to have it all. No, you access it as you need it. So that was one of the things that I understood. Another thing that I learned was that when you're working with your shadow side, one of the most effective ways to do that work is not necessarily by recreating a lot of these experiences or remembering. Actually, the most direct way is using the energy of unconditional love. And how do you do that? Well, what happens is that a lot of times we are anxious, right? Or something feels off. And if we take that moment, right? And we take that moment as we become aware that we're feeling that way and stop, right? And instead of, getting distracted or, eating or watching something or talking to someone. No, we realize, oh, I'm feeling uncomfortable. Something emotionally is not right, and it's making me feel stressed, or it's making me feel anxious, or it's making me feel depressed. And we just sit with ourselves and start talking to that part of ourselves as we're talking to our child with love, right? I don't know which part of me is feeling like it's not love, but I'm going to love you and I'm going to accept you. It's like talking to your inner child. Okay, we all have an inner child, and that is the aspect of ourselves that somehow we disconnect from as we start growing up and we start forgetting about it. And that's the part of ourselves that actually starts, uh, um, getting angry, right? Getting disappointed. It's a part of ourselves that, at some point, it starts creating a lot of chaos. So that inner child needs to be fed, and it needs to be fed with love. So one of the things that I started feeling that as I was do that, as I would talk to that part of me in a loving way, a lot of that emotional pain would go away, would dissolve. And the more I did that, the more I could feel like parts of me were coming together, and I was feeling stronger. And this is our concept of grounding. A lot of times they tell you, what do you ground your energy? And I don't know about you, but a lot of times I didn't know what that meant. So I would say, what does that mean? How do I ground myself? What do I, plant myself in the soil? Well, they do that. Some of shamans, when a person is going through a rebirth, they bury you in soil with Mother Earth, and this you have a rebirth where Mother Earth, cleans you, purifies you. It's beautiful. It's quite, scary, but it's actually, a really beautiful thing. But anyways, so yeah, you can use that unconditional love, and what happens is that a lot of these cracks, right, that takes place when you have a negative experience, it starts getting filled once again with that unconditional love, and it starts making you feel whole. And that method is actually a lot better and easier than doing ayahuasca. Now, I'm not here to talk you out of ayahuasca. If you have made the decision to do that, that's okay. But I think it's important that you know what you're up against. I think it's important that you have a clear intention of what you're getting yourself into. I think also it's important to know that there's other options that will help you a lot and achieve the same type of work. It may not be massive, but baby steps, they're definitely little by little is in a way that can help you feel, definitely more grounded. Okay, so that was one of the things that I learned that was very powerful. And I will tell you, up to this point, I have put the energy out there that I am willing to do more ayahuasca, but it has to be with the right person, at least for me. I think I basically were able to overcome this strong desire that I have to do it because I need to find out. I've been able to have many answers. I was able also to reconcile my situation with my last partner. Unfortunately, he passed away this year and it was very difficult. But ayahuasca didn't give me the answers about that relationship. I was able to achieve it by just the work that I did on my own. Ayahuasca was able to help me heal a lot of my childhood trauma, which was the reason, right, why I was attracting a lot of this type of people that I didn't want to anymore. So in some ways, she did part of the work and I've been doing the rest. And I gotta tell you that it's been life-changing. I am now 55 years old, and it's for the first time that I feel capable of doing something without feeling like I'm not good enough. And this is the greatest gift that I've received and I've been giving myself this time around, where I've been able finally to overcome a lot of those insecurities that I created through the relationship of my own mother. I now been able to finally release and purge a lot of those emotional memories from my childhood. And I had forgiven my mother a long time ago, my mother and my father. But this just took it to the next level. And now I am able to have a very clean relationship with my parents, to the point that I started a year ago a meditation, and they come and they participate, to the point that, my father today asked me for forgiveness in a way that I was just like in shock. So as you could see, there is hope. There's always hope. And if you become committed and determined to do the work, you will see. It takes a lot of patience. And, a lot of times within that patience, you find a lot of clarity, but also a lot of wisdom. So don't rush it. This is not to be rushed. This is more about baby steps and making sure that whatever you're doing is going to help you and assist you to achieve the desired results. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Just trust a lot of that intuition as you're doing this work, because it's really not easy. This is quite challenging, and just be prepared, because a lot of time the plant, depending on how the medicine is made, that's another thing. So not only you have to have the Icarus and you have to have the experience of the shaman, but you also have to have the right medicine. If the shaman knows what they're doing, the medicine is going to be very effective. A lot of times facilitators are buying medicine from somebody else. They don't know how to make it. And you don't know who they're buying it from. They're telling you one thing, but it doesn't mean that what they're telling you it is. A lot of times the shamans, are turning the ayahuasca into bar soaps, and when it comes into this part of the world, they're mixing it in water. They're watering it down. So there's all kinds of things that are happening. And look, I'm not saying that, if you feel prompted to do it, don't, to not to. But just, be a little bit conscientious of, what to do and what you're getting yourself into. Very important. So anyways, I hope this video helped. If you want to reach out and ask any other questions, you can email me at createharmonywithlove@gmail.com. I love you guys. Thank you for listening. Until next time.